February 12th, 1963. I am born on a Tuesday at University Hospital, Columbus, Ohio, USA, a country caught between black and white. I am born not long from the time or far from the place where my great-great-grandparents worked the deep, rich land, unfree, dawn till dusk, unpaid, drank cool water from scooped-out gourds, looked up and followed the sky's mirrored constellation to freedom. I am born as the South explodes, too many people, too many years. Enslaved, then emancipated, but not free. The people who look like me keep fighting and marching and getting killed so that today, February 12th, 1963, and every day from this moment on, brown children like me can grow up free, can grow up learning and voting and walking and riding wherever we want. I am born in Ohio, but the stories of South Carolina already run like rivers through my veins.
That was Jacqueline Woodson, an African-American female lesbian poet, reading her poem February 12, 1963, from her memoir Brown Girl Dreaming. My name is Chris, a Caucasian-American male college student. These descriptions are important, something I will get into at the end when I discuss Woodson's poem Commercial Break. I think it's important to tell you what I look like because I've learned a few things in the process of studying African-American literature under a white male teacher. Having a white male teacher for African-American literature may seem like an oxymoron, something my teacher has taken the time to address. But what he lacks in his experience as a white person, he makes up for with his love of poetry, admiration for African-American poets, and having the ability to recognize his status as an outsider to the art. Having this awareness allows him to understand that there are things in African-American poetry and American life he will never truly understand because he cannot experience it. In doing this essay about Jacqueline Woodson's poetry, I understand that there are poems I cannot fully understand. This is something my teacher and Jacqueline have both taught me. Therefore, I will discuss and analyze two of her poems, one acting as a mirror in which I can see part of myself when reading it, and the other as a window that I can look into in order to see Woodson's life and better understand her perspective. First, let's discover how Jacqueline Woodson came to be. Jacqueline Woodson was born in Ohio, but after her parents had split up, she moved with her mother as an infant to South Carolina. She grew up in her grandmother's house. Her grandmother was a big part of why Jacqueline and her siblings growing up were Jehovah's Witnesses. Woodson remembers at a very young age knocking up at doors, spreading their good news, and asking for donations. Since then, Woodson no longer belongs to the religion, but believes in spirituality and being a good person. Growing up in South Carolina during her early years of childhood compared to the rest of her life in Brooklyn, she notes that both places have strongly influenced her personality. The South had taught her to be comfortable with silence. She doesn't mind when silence slips into conversations, while the North had made her fearless among ignorant people. She has said, "I have no tolerance for people who are not thinking deeply about things." She also remembers the effects racism had on her people in the South during the times of early post-segregation and Jim Crow laws during the 1960s. It even had an impact on her parents splitting up. Jacqueline reveals this in a poem called Journey and confirms it in an NPR interview. In line 3, stanza 1 of Jacqueline's poem Journey, she cites her father saying to her,
"Journey, you can keep your South, my father says. The way they treated us down there, I got your mama out as quick as I could. Brought her right up here to Ohio."
This explains why she was born in Ohio, but also explains why this journey eventually became her parents' undoing, because as Jacqueline says herself,
later on, I realized they were also fiercely attached to place and what they had always known. So it was interesting just investigating those two worlds and coming to understand what would pull people apart.
At a very young age, Jacqueline and her siblings were always reading, something she attributes to her being skilled in writing. She always knew that writing made her happy. Jacqueline got in trouble a lot as a kid for lying. She claims that she was very good, too. Her uncle and teacher encouraged her to keep lying and making up these stories, but on paper. It wasn't until 5th grade that people expressed interest in her writing. One year, she had written a poem about Martin Luther King that no one believed she had written. I am glad that her family and mentors encouraged her to read and write because Jacqueline has been a very profound and genuine writer. She has written over 30 books that cover many difficult topics through the use of picture books, middle grade to young adult books, and of course, poetry. Her subjects range from foster care to interracial relationships, from drug abuse to witness protection program, but all share the common features of lyrical language, powerful characters, and an abiding sense of hope. Not only has she written so many books, but her books have won countless awards. Jacqueline Woodson focuses a lot of her energy towards children's literature, and because she is so talented and cares so deeply about children, she was awarded Young People's Poet Laureate by the Poetry Foundation in 2015. Because of her substantial work towards helping young people develop a voice in their writing and reading, she was also appointed National Ambassador for Young People's Literature for the Library of Congress from 2018 to 2019. I think bestowing this honor to Jacqueline Woodson was a good choice, especially after hearing what she had to say about what the Young People's Poet Laureate meant to her.
It means that I can choose my platform. It means I can spend a lot of time with poetry and talking to young people about poetry. My platform is really trying to work with underserved kids, especially in rural areas where kids have never met an author, think they've never met a poet, and bring to them the accessibility of both poetry and their own ability to speak and write and read poetry. So this fall, I've gone to a couple of places, but this fall I'm returning to some parts of rural Mississippi and Tennessee. I'm going back down south and just talking to young people about the gospel of poetry.
Brown Girl Dreaming is a middle grade verse novel, but I found myself as an adult thoroughly enjoying the poems. It was published in 2014 and took Woodson 4 years to finish writing it. She explains that the difficulty in writing this book stems from memory and putting her poems in linear format. It is quite astonishing that her poems can flow and still tell the story of her life by how she and others in her family remember it. When reading this book, which I believe you should, Jacqueline gives the reader advice on how to read her book through a series of haikus titled How to Listen, followed by the number in the series. The title How to Listen is in reference to how Woodson came to learn this virtue for herself, but also a call for the reader to learn. Each one reveals something different, but the series will teach you how to listen for and learn from racism, pain, loss, struggle, but also friendships, dreams, love, and joyful experiences. In order to prepare us for my favorite poem by Jacqueline in Brown Girl Dreaming, I will read the first in her series of haikus. How to Listen. Number 1. Somewhere in my brain, each laugh, tear, and lullaby becomes memory. The word somewhere refers to the searching Jacqueline has had to endure to find these memories in her brain. During this whole experience, the joy and laughter, the pain in her tears, and songs she's experienced over the years have helped her find these memories. It is also an indication that at some times this search was fun, while at other times it was hard to relive. It is very interesting that she italicized memory. Woodson explains it best herself when she says, "Memories don't come back as straight narrative. They come in little bursts with white space all around them. It felt more realistic to write mine as poems." I would like to share my favorite poem by Woodson called Reading from her book Brown Girl Dreaming. I will be doing the reading, so I'll try my best. Reading. I am not my sister. Words from the books curl around each other, make little sense until I read them again and again. The story settling into memory. Too slow, the teacher says. Read faster. Too babyish, the teacher says. Read older. But I don't want to read faster or older or any way else that might make the story disappear too quickly from where it's settling, inside my brain, slowly becoming a part of me. A story I will remember long after I've read it for the 2nd, 3rd, 10th, 100th time. This poem is my favorite because it acts more as a mirror for me than a window. I've experienced the struggle of being a slow reader. I may not know what it's like for Jacqueline to be black or female, but I can relate to this universal struggle of feeling incompetent. I too have made the mistake of comparing my ability and accomplishments to others, something Jacqueline does when she says, "I am not my sister." Then again, this line doesn't necessarily imply Jacqueline compared herself to her older sister. It could mean that other people are telling Jacqueline to be more like her. She also explains that she struggles with words, and that they sometimes make little sense, and the only way to have the meanings of these words stick to memory is by reading them over and over again very slowly, something I have to do myself. She even goes as far to say she has read something over again for the 100th time, either because she couldn't understand it or because she loves it and doesn't want it to disappear too quickly. This poem allows children to feel comfortable and okay with their ability to read at different paces. If reading slowly works for you, and you can grasp information better by doing so, then you shouldn't feel pressured to read faster or feel you aren't as good as others your age. This is something Jacqueline and I both wish we were told when we were younger.
I think what my younger self would say was, they're lying, you're not struggling. I think it's one of the most messed up messages we give our kids, that they have to read fast, when, as you know, it takes us forever to write these books, right? And we don't want people speeding through them. We want them to spend time.
I believe this next poem I'm about to recite connects nicely to Woodson's poem Reading, because perhaps by coincidence, it is about commercials. Jacqueline, at a very young age, used to write down the lyrics from songs on records and TV commercials so that the words would settle in her brain. The next poem I'm about to read is called Commercial Break. Now, the poem isn't about Woodson watching commercials to memorize words, but I like to think it was inspired by that process. Unfortunately, I don't have her number to ask her. Commercial Break is from another verse novel called Locomotion, published in 2010. It is entirely told through the poetry of the main character Lonnie, who becomes an orphan along with his sister after their parents die. He struggles making his way through the world, being placed in foster care, jumping from different homes, and being split from his sister. He ends up under the care of Miss Edna and learns poetry from his 5th grade teacher, Miss Marcus. Now with some context, I will read you the poem. Commercial Break. Last night, this commercial came on TV. It was this white lady making a nice dinner for her husband. She made him some baked chicken with potatoes and gravy and some kind of greens, not collards, but they still looked real good. Everything looked so delicious. I just wanted to reach into that television and snatch a plate for myself. He gave her a kiss, and then a voice came on saying, "He'll love you for it," and then the commercial went off. I sat on Miss Edna's scratchy couch, wondering if that man and woman really ate that food, or just threw it all away. Now, Miss Marcus wants to know why I wrote that the lady is white, and I say because it's true. And Miss Marcus says, "Lonnie, what does race have to do with it?" Forgetting that she asked us to use lots of details when we wrote. Forgetting that whole long talk she gave yesterday about the importance of description. I don't say anything back to her, just look down at my arm. It's dark brown. And there's a scab by my wrist that I don't pick at if I remember not to. I look at my knuckles. They're real dark too. Outside it's starting to rain, and the way the rain comes down, tapping against the window, it gets me to thinking. Miss Marcus don't understand some things even though she's my favorite teacher in the world. Things like my brown arm, and the white lady and man with all that good food to throw away. How if you turn on your TV, that's what you see. People with lots and lots of stuff not having to sit on scratchy couches in Miss Edna's house. And the true fact is a lot of those people are white. Maybe it's that if you're white, you can't see all the whiteness around you. Here is a poem that is not a mirror for someone like me. It is more of a window. I have no idea what this feeling is like for people of color, because I cannot experience it being white and living in a dominated white culture. This is why the importance of description is so relevant when I am discussing these poems. I can only interpret this poem from the outside looking in. It's important for me to recognize that, and it's important for you to know that as well. There is only so much I can say to validate these feelings and experiences within these poems. So why is it okay for someone like me and my teacher to teach, discuss, and contribute to African American poetry? I'll have Woodson answer that for you. She says, "My hope is that those who write about the tears and the laughter and the language of my grandmother's house first sat down at the table with us and dipped the bread of their own experiences into our stew." Considering that my teacher has dedicated his life to this form of literature, he doesn't write poetry about African Americans because it's the in thing to do, but rather because he has sat at the table with poets like Lucille Clifton and discussed and respected those writers' perspectives and views. For me, I am only just beginning to learn about these poets and writers of America thanks to my teacher, and I am grateful. Unfortunately, we live in a country that has a dominated white culture. I have never read anything from these African American writers growing up. And part of this poem is getting at that problem. Lonnie describes the lady in the commercial as white. His teacher asked the question, what does race have to do with it? I would say everything. To Lonnie, this detail is important when being black in America. He says that Miss Marcus doesn't understand some things like his brown arm. Why doesn't she understand these things? Well, he says, maybe it's that if you're white, you can't see all the whiteness around you. It's a beautiful poem that allows children to understand these difficult questions about race in America. I love the way James Baldwin puts it. What white people don't know about black people, they don't know about themselves. Miss Marcus doesn't understand what black people go through because 1, she's not black herself, and 2, probably because she doesn't try to learn about what it means to be white in America. Commercial Break is a free verse poem that allows the reader to step in the mind of Lonnie to understand how he views the world. We understand what these images do to Lonnie when he sees so many white folk on the TV with more stuff than he has. This is what makes Woodson so incredible. She is able to represent the character Lonnie in the form of poetry and represent the feeling of her community through him. If you think that this topic is not relevant now and that TV is more diversified than it used to be, I urge you to read White Fragility that addresses these issues, which is written by a white woman named Robin DiAngelo. Here are a few statistics from her book. People who decide which TV shows we see, 93% white. People who decide which books we read, 90% white. People who decide which news is covered, 85% white. People who decide which music is produced, 95% white. I like this poem along with so many others by Jacqueline Woodson. She really cares about the literary opportunities children should have that can help them feel part of this world. Woodson does a wonderful job of making minorities feel represented in this world. If you haven't already, you should check her out.